Hello, everybody. This is amazing. It's good to see you people on the screen and you people in person. It's kind of a treat. I thought I'd just share my screen and look at the proposed agenda for today. Why can't I share my screen? I know why. You know, one of the things, it's our whole life, we're going to be the people who say, oh, you're on mute, right? So we want to call the meeting to order and do some welcomes and introductions, adopt the agenda, approve the minutes. If there are any citizen comments, do you know if there's we have one. Okay, citizens. And then I wanted to take some time and sort of take a step back and look at what we know from other cities. And then report from the subcommittee if they have reports. And then figure out what the next step is. And then if there's other business. Is there anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda or take off?
No.
Okay, so let's just go around the table or screen. And one of you, I'd like you to say your name and one local environmental issue for you. What is one local issue that you're thinking about? I'll start and give you the rest of you a moment to think about it. I'm thinking about what I'm calling the last mile. Somebody gets off the bus, then what? How do you get people to that last mile, home or from home to the transit? And as the 145th and 185th opens, it'll be the last mile and a half, I guess. That's fine. And I'm Sarah. So anybody else? I'll go. Great.
I'm Mimi Bertram from Miriam. And I'm thinking it's summer's coming and I wish it would get warm, but I'm thinking about heating up. And what shows we had last summer, we don't, and people will be able to withstand that better.
Somebody else.
Since I'm standing, I guess I'll go next. I'm Tracy Bertani, I'm the liaison to City Council, and when you say environmental, it doesn't have to do with greenhouse gases necessarily.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, since Brian's out here, I'll know what his and my main concern of is the presence of 6 ppm quinone in the streams and how that's affecting our salmon returns.
6 what?
PPD quinone.
Is that the tire?
It's the tire chemical. You can call it that tire chemical.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
You guys been measuring it over time?
It's the analysis is difficult, and it was only published a few years ago, and so there's not many labs that actually test it because it's a big, heavy liquid chromatograph they use. So yeah, it's tough. But we are talking to various labs about running us because they did right? So I'm figuring, well, we're just the next week up, really. So.
Okay. How about you,
Folks
Linda?
folks in the room, it's really hard to hear you guys, so you need to speak a little bit louder and a little bit clearer, and particularly when you get towards the end of your sentences, you kind of start off projecting and then you fade away, and so we only hear like maybe the first half of your sentence, if that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Over there. So can we speak?
Problem.
Okay.
Speak at louder to hear us?
Are you hearing us better now?
Yes.
As long as you're not all talking at the same time, so it really has to be like one person and like clear. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Linda, do you have an issue?
Yes, my issue is thinking about the summer and the heat coming and water management and how to most effectively utilize water to retain what we have in terms of our canopy and our things that we want to save in our yard for the environment, for keeping it green and healthy, and how that's going to work.
All right, somebody else.
So I'm Ann, and what I've been thinking about is only tangentially tied into what our committee is working with, but it does tie in. And that is looking at the LiDAR imagery of the city of Lake Forest Park. There's some obvious huge slump blocks and land deformations in our area. And when we're talking about emergency management and long-term management of this little unique set of valleys that is ours, part of that is managing those slump features, both in terms of more intense short duration rain events, but also in terms of, so what happens in an earthquake? Because we know we've got them coming. So, okay, again, on the side, but that's been percolating.
Okay. Somebody else?
I'll go. This is Jessica. So I've been thinking about food waste and really trying to personally doing a better job of planning what we're going to eat for the week, not buying more than what we're going to eat in a week, and just not throwing away food, because we know that that's a big, contributor in the landfills. And also trying to spend more time at the farmers market and not have single-use plastics as part of our food usage and eating.
Okay, thank you.
I can go. This is Anna. I've been thinking about the waste that is like the junk mail that comes into our mailboxes every week, and how we can reduce that because it's very excessive.
Okay. Bella, how about you?
Hi, I'm Bella. This is like pretty broad, but I was in Arizona like over a month ago, and wildfire season has already started there. There's like a massive, massive fire. And this past week, everyone's been complaining about the rain in June. And my comment is I'd much rather see rain, and I'm dreading when like fire season starts up here. Yeah.
This is Tamara Erickson, and what I'm thinking about now is it's obviously more beneficial for us to be on hydroelectric power than to use coal, but at the same time, it also affects our rivers and streams. So how do we balance those different interests and still have clean energy?
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Dana, and my thought was kind of along the lines of Bella's, that I've been thinking about my daughter who lives over in Kirkland and trying to figure out making one of those box filters for her house to filter out small particles in the air. And realizing that this is the time to go to Home Depot or wherever to get those filters. Attached to those.
Okay, great.
Yes.
We've got everybody. You know, one of the things we did last week when we talked about the we agree, one of them was to be graceful with Zoom. And, I think of that all the time. It's just a tough thing to
You can
figure out.
actually squeeze it. Yeah, so if you take both sides, yeah, you got it.
We're moving you around. Can you see that we're, those of you who are on the screen, can you see we're moving you around?
No.
Oh, we're trying to move you so we can see you all at the same time. But we can only see four. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do was just see if we can approve the minutes. There were 2 minutes. We had May and June. Oh, no, April and May.
April,
And, if people have had a chance to read them, and if there's no objection, if we could just go ahead and adopt them, or I can put them up there and you can look at them.
The ones that just sent out Tracy's.
Oh, yeah, we left Tracy off, so.
Yeah, but having been corrected to that, I thought they were in good shape.
Okay, is there any objection to the minutes?
no,
Really no, so great. Okay, So,
Call for objection 3 times.
I did want to let you know that we have had a resignation. Julian has resigned from the committee. He just said he had too much on his plate and didn't think that he could bring the kind of attention they thought the meeting needed. So he's resigned. So there is an opening on the committee, and if you know anybody who you think might be interested, we're encouraging you to have them send the mayor a letter of interest. So.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, Anna?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, do we think that I was looking over the other plans for like Kenmore specifically, and how they have like specific planners who were working on this, and do you think it would be a good idea to have like a person who has a planning degree be on the committee, or at least like advise the committee partially?
Yeah, you got somebody?
I don't personally, but I was hoping that someone else would.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that there are lots of talents that we need on the committee. Diversity is another issue for me, that we make this as diverse a committee as possible. But the other thing is who stands up is another category. So I encourage you to ask around. I've talked with a couple of people already. One PTA, active PTA mom, and another somebody who's been involved in the city before. So we're just looking at those and, throw them out to them, to the mayor to decide. Are there citizen comments? No, great. Is that right, Corey?
Good.
Yeah, they would have to raise their hand, stating it, right?
Okay. Well, I wanted to thank Dana and Mimi and so many of the others of you. As I circled around, it was pretty clear there were some things that we needed to do that were sort of too in terms of where we were as a group. And I wanted to just take a second and sort of refocus us on really what it is a plan, and what do we know from other people, and how we can move forward. But I did want to remind you that we do have a goal that the city is committed to, and that is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% and achieve net carbon neutrality by 2050. And what that means really is that that we would be equal. Our goal is to reduce as much carbon as we take in, right? It says a process or activity in which the total amount of carbon in the carbon-containing gases released into the environment is offset by the amount of carbon in such gases that are removed from the environment. And that will get us significantly down the road, but we also need to figure out, it's not this is what the city is committed to. There'll be other folks taking activities that move, sequester the current carbon, but good news, that's not our job. We don't have to do that in science. So just a reminder of sort of where we are on this. And then Dana pulled a lot of this information together and put it out there, and I wanted to share it again, just what the mission is, and that the Climate Action Committee will draft a climate action plan for recommendations to the City Council, and that the initial responsibilities are a first-year work plan supporting the creation of the action plan, and then we move into implementation, the draft and action plan. I just want to say this is an enormous task, and it's really unlike the other committees and commissions who have an ongoing, the tree commission has trees and they deal with what the tree issue is for this year, and then next year they deal with that, whatever the next issue is. Our job is a little different, which I only came to recently. So I actually shared with one of, as I sort of circled around with you, with many of you. So, so the question we want to ask, and what I'd like is if you have any questions or any issues or anything, to just interrupt and to say, what do you mean? How could that possibly be? Have you lost your mind? All those things are good questions to ask as we proceed through this. But yeah, Tracy.
And part of the issue that Sarah's alluding to is, if you're the planning commission, there are very specific numerical parts of our city code that you look at. Or if you're Parks and Recreation, there are very specific parts that you amend, that you write new sections for, but it's already kind of laid out there. And we're going to be all over our city code, and we're doing things that are not even in our city code. So that's part of the difficulty of what we have to do here, is that we have to kind of invent the process as, what is it? We're building the boat as we're writing in it, right?
Yeah. I can't actually see all of you on the screen, so jump in if you have your hand up on the screen.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt for a second. My Wi-Fi is pretty bad, so I'm gonna turn my camera off, and I'm not like walking away or anything. I'm still here. I'm just like, my camera's gonna be off so I can hear everything better.
Okay. Perfect. So the question we want to ask is, how do we get to a climate action work plan? That's the first question. And the good news is that a lot of other people have thought about the answer to this question, and it isn't just us. And there are both government organizations that have thought about the answer to this, and there are non-for-profit organizations that have thought about this. And while they're not the same, they don't have exactly the same steps, they have kind of the same steps. And I just wanted so there's a group, and I think it started in Washington. Did People for Climate Action start in Washington?
It started in Bellevue, and it really is limited to the King County area right now.
So this is a group of people who have been operating for a couple of years and looking at the issue of climate, and they have they've put on seminars and they've done a variety of other things. And one of the things is, how do you get each of the cities to work on a climate action plan? And so they've had these 10 steps. Good news, we've accomplished the first one. We are the first one. The second piece is to understand your community's assessments. And we're going to circle around to that because that's a critical issue. So once you say, what is it that this city is doing that's creating emissions? Then you say, well, what are our targets for our city? It's kind of a hyper-local activity about what we can do in our place. And then we draft a community and city government engagement strategy. We list climate action actions and draft priorities. We launch a community-wide education and engagement program, obtain city council approval for a drafted plan, implement, track and report, and start over. So that's what People for Climate Action suggests. The King County has a workbook that they've created, which is available online, which lists a gazillion steps. And their steps for starting these are essentially the same, but they've made them, they've compacted them. So they missed the step where we all get together and are the Climate Action Committee. But then the key is understanding your community's emissions, and then assessing assessing your strengths of your community level, of your community's level of commitment. Develop a kind of climate action strategy tailored to your community. Implement implement emissions reduction actions, and measure and report. It's the same sort of process where the key part for us, well, not the key part, but the next part is this emissions issue. How do we find out what the emissions are and what can we do about it? So I just wanted to share Kenmore's plan, which is again, I just want to say there's a sort of a rollout plan that you want to figure out. They put in their plan that the first thing they were going to do is get emissions levels and goals. Some cities do not have a committee that's doing this. They hire a consultant, and then sometimes they get an advisory group, so that we're in the place where, and I think that's what Kenmore did. I don't think they started with a community. So they did their emissions levels and goals, and then they had phase 2, which was community outreach and developing the top strategies and actions for emissions reductions. And then phase 3 was solicit public feedback and strategies, develop an implementation timeline, develop and adopt the plan. So it's in each of these cases, the notion is you'd say, it's sort of like we would get together, we figure out what the emissions are, plan it, what is our level of emissions. We would then set some goals, and we test drive. We should use those in test drive in an electric car. These things, and we go out to people and we'd say, is this right? What do you think? And then we fool around with them and make them better on the basis of the feedback. Then go back out again is what people are suggesting, sort of a double touch to the public, because if we don't get the public involved in the beginning, we will get involved in the end. So there's a lot of outreach. And then on the basis of that, they develop a climate action plan, which I think they just passed it last month. And I just put in there that phase 1 and 2 took a year to do, and they had consultants that they had, and that eliminated it. So, excuse me. Any questions about this sort of set? The question is, does this make sense in terms of where we ought to be doing, figuring out our next step would be the emissions levels and goals, and does that seem like we're in the right wheelhouse?
My question would be, is there more that we're thinking about besides lowering emissions? Are we thinking about like the community and bolstering the community, making the community stronger in terms of heat events or other climate related events that I don't see in here, but
Can more only talk about emissions?
yeah.
No, they talk about remediation.
Okay.
So, go ahead. If I could share, one of the things that I think we haven't gotten into very much because we're very young. This is our 3rd meeting, and our first meeting was, hi, my name is Ann. One of the things we haven't gotten into is the strategies that we can engage in. And what I did for the Jollies is I printed out the people for climate action, mitigation strategies, and they're not just mitigation, they're also sequestration, etc. But they cover a lot of ground, and one of those areas is, to answer Dana's question exactly, climate change preparation, which includes emergency management, reducing health impacts, heat, smoke, water conservation, wildlife risk management, protect natural resources, decrease heat island effects, preserve watersheds and aquifers, manage stormwater, manage floodplains, landslide risk, monitor climate change, etc. So these things are in a climate action plan. There are a lot of existing ideas that we can select from and see what does and does not fit our community. Being impatient, I want to do many things at once. So that's one thing that will be done. Communication is one thing that must be done, but also measuring so that we have a rational basis for prioritizing. Yeah. This is people for climate.
What region is it focused on?
All of King County.
Okay.
And King County has, in their workbook, has a significant set of those activities as well. And we're going to circle around and get to that. I just wanted to, so thank you, because I think if we don't get the public on board, I think that's the key, is the public engagement. And if they don't see that what we're doing is helping to solve problems that are going to come down the road, then I think we've missed an opportunity.
So
So
can I ask just bring up another question is, so you, at the beginning, you said, that our current assignment is we're supposed to develop a first year work plan first, right? Before we actually develop the climate action plan. And it feels like we're trying to jump right to the climate action plan as opposed to the first year work plan.
Well, yes, let me just say that where I got confused was thinking that the tree board was a model for us about what a work plan was. And I would come to the conclusion based on other people that it's not the model that we want to use. So what I wanted to do, Jessica, was sort of make sure that we were all on the same page about where we wanted to, where we needed to go. And then I have included in this a draft work plan, which I think is only because it seems to be just what everybody else is doing, and we could then move on. Does that make sense?
It does. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm just following up with Kenmore. Once Kenmore, in terms of their process, they went out, they ended up with these five, I can't count, four areas. And so their focus areas of their plan were transportation and land use, and then they had subs and buildings and energy, materials consumption, natural water systems, and community resilience and well-being. And that's that category you were talking. So plans do include all of those things. And there's just a sample. And then they talk about their focus area. They talk about the focus area goals. And then for each of them, they developed, I think it was like what Anne was talking about, which is a very specific set of activities. So this was I just pulled this one out, the transition to use of energy efficient vehicles, work with community organizations, and then, very specific kinds of things, because that's what's measurable. And was that guy from the Japanese model guy said, if you can't measure it, it doesn't count. Right? What's his name? The Toyota guy. He had a stick. That's what in the pictures of him, he had a stick.
But realistically, all science is based in testable hypotheses.
Right.
You have to have a testable hypothesis. If it's not testable, it's not a hypothesis.
And I just wanted to show one more. This is Mercer Island, and Mercer Island is starting right now, and they have a 12-month plan where they're talking about, again, the same. It's different in the sense that it's modified for their local organization, but they're publicize the launch of the project, hold a community kickoff. We might think about that, and then do the baseline assessment, develop strategies and actions, write the climate action plan, and then they go back out. And so what I learned is there's a model, and we should use it. That's right. And thanks. So this was Kenmore's process. This was Kenmore's kind of work plan. This is what they said they were going to do. And it's the same sort. This is their plan. They said they were going to complete an inventory, forecast emissions. This is their assess climate risks, which is something some of the plans have and some don't. Adopt strategies and goals, prepare and select strategies and actions, prepare and develop a climate action plan, fund and implement it, track progress. So again, so I was suggesting that this was our work plan, and I wanted to just take a run at it. It's different from the tree board because I think we're different from the trees, from the tree committee. And it only has four, it's the same, it's exactly the same, I don't mean exactly, it's like the same from the other organizations. So you determine the emission levels for Lake Forest Park, and then we set strategies, goals and strategies, we develop and implement an outreach plan and draft a climate action plan. And I was, so if we looked at what we said, what I was suggesting we did under determining the emissions levels was review other cities' plans, review the King County emissions study for Lake Forest Park. We're going to come back to that. Identify greenhouse gas sources from the available data that we have around. And that would be, we would be focusing on that in the summer. Although I just learned that I just said this, I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about the King County emissions study. It's apparently not, they're going to have one for Lake Forest Park, but it's not done yet, and it probably won't be done for a month. So this may push all that. And then once we had that information, the emissions and the goals, we would work together to figure out what are our top goals, what are the kinds of things, and we did a little bit of work on that all earlier in the second meeting, and we'll come back, I think, and circle around that and look at what we said and develop initial strategies and actions. So what we would have by fall would be sort of a set of our best ideas about where we think the city ought to go and some initial strategies about how to get there. So for example, we might have a goal of electrifying Lake Forest Park. And then the strategy would be work with Kenmore Shoreline, Kenmore Bothell, and hold heat pump workshops for all of them. Then we take that out, and there's some overlap between setting the goals and strategies and developing and implementing the outreach plan. There's some, I think, overlap. But we would develop an outreach plan, and that is brochures, websites, I guess, social media and press. What is it that we need to do? One of the things that we found very helpful in the task force, in the town hall we did, was to reach out to not only boards and commissions, but nonprofits and special interest groups. They'd share their email list with us, distribute information. That might be a strategy. And then draft a climate action plan, produce a final draft, get input, go back to those groups, and then take it to the council. So my question is, what do you think?
I think there's one thing, good, the input from just the people that live in Lake Forest Park, right? It's not, it's there and I'm not seeing it. We're just talking to people and letting them know what we're doing and what are their concerns. And
I think that
that's part of outreach.
it's the outreach plan. Okay. I think that part that I get from this is we're showing this as being linear when we do one thing, then we do the next thing. In fact, I think we do all three of those first items concurrently for several months.
I guess the question is, what does outreach mean?
It means
top
back and forth. No,
Okay,
it's a
the
back and forth.
conversation.
It's an outreach to receive input as well as to share ideas.
But those of you who were on the outreach committee, did you have some ideas about how you thought we should do outreach when you were? Did you have a chance to meet, Anna?
Say that one more time, just the last part. You cut out a little bit.
Sorry. Did you have any ideas as you were thinking about outreach?
Well, I think definitely like finding a way to like gain information on what all different members of the community are, like what their goals are, because if like our goals and their goals don't align, or if they're not like as aware of the issues as we think they are, I don't think that people are going to be like receptive to this. Especially like I think we need to keep them involved like throughout the whole process, whether it's social media for younger people or things posted in like the town center for people who go in there who might be on the older side, and just make sure we're getting like all ages.
Yeah, yes. so it might be, I think outreach is anything we want. My belief is the more people you touch, the more people you get engaged, the more likely they'll be buying at the end.
I don't know if anybody has a sense of whether people in.
I'm sorry, but I think, is that Miriam? I can't tell who's talking, but you need to speak up, whoever it is in the middle of the table. I can't see you from your face because you're too far away.
Me? Can you hear me? I don't have a loud voice.
Yes,
I
yes,
think-
now I can hear you.
I'm just wondering how easy it's going to be to get individuals on board. Do they understand the urgency of the problem as as individuals in the community? Because I think that that's sort of a general lack of understanding, is that how urgent it actually is that things get done and that what they do matters. And so that's, to me, that's part of the outreach, is having those conversations and getting everybody's buy-in. So
Sarah.
Go ahead, Val.
I agree with that. I think like a big part of the outreach could be about like education and like kind of going with what Anna said, like in order to get our message across, people kind of have to like know what's going on, and sometimes even if they know what's going on, they don't understand like why it's happening. So I think that we could just kind of center a lot of the outreach part on like, it could be split up into parts of like education and then like explanation and then like what we're going to do and how they can help and how can they can give us like their input. And social media is a really good way to do that. And so is like the farmers markets and stuff.
Say that again, Bella.
I said social media is a really good way to do that. And so is like being at farmers markets and having a table and like people having access to like ask questions.
So what I see that's good about where we are is that some of this has already happened, right? We have had 2 of the weekend town halls. And I know Brian's done several, and Tracy have done several
Street talks.
Zoom talks. There's a lot of interest, I think, out there, and there are a lot of people that can address the different kinds of issues that are out here, that are working on things in our town, and I think that kind of thing is a natural way to generate interest. You can talk about specific things that are happening in our town and bring that into the whole climate issue. So I would think that a big part of the education or outreach committee would be pulling people together that are out there in the community that represent, these interesting things that are going on or ways that people are dealing with this. And then, you'd have an organization where you're not just trying to reach out to everybody everywhere. You've got like people that are out there that are then reaching out, and those people can reach out. So it's more of a tree than us just trying to disseminate information or whatever it is. That's good too. But I think we've got some power in being a small tiger.
So I will say too, like, you guys will be invited to any of our community events to host a booth, which is, crazy out
You may need
there.
to speak louder to the camera.
Yeah, you guys will be invited to any of like the community events when you guys are a little bit more organized to host booths. And then this, like next fall, we can also work on a revamped green fair. You guys can bring better ideas and get community outreach out.
There are a number of organizations like the Stewardship Foundation and People for Climate Action, and like I thought a whole list of water districts is also writing a climate action plan for that. And they can, I think, bringing all these people together and assets that are in the community together, I think that's really important. And that I would add also into this timeline. Like if we're determining emission levels, we can also, during that same time, have a group of us determining the vulnerabilities of this community. Like, what is it that we're worrying about happening in this community? And what assets do we have in this community that we can use? We have the water board, for example, which could act as, it could provide water if needed, or be a cooling center, or whatever. We've got the town center here that could also be, we can talk to people in the town here, whatever. It's all these different places that are our assets that we can use in our plan and incorporate these people in.
So I don't know how to edit on this thing. Is there a way to do this, Ann?
Not while you're in this particular mode.
So what I'm hearing then is that we think that that there is sort of another bar that goes underneath that has to do with outreach and education and outreach that starts right now. And that we make that we use the assets that are in the community at this point. And we need some work on how to do that. But there was a model where they had conversation cafes when the Commons was open, where people came in and talked about things. Anna, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. I completely agree with like implementing communication with the community at all of these different stages, but I also think that like one of the issues in the last meeting and like so far has been trying to do too much at once. And so I think we should still try to keep like not like a, you know, like a strict linear plan, but like we need a good outline where some things don't overlap, because otherwise I think we're going to find that there's too much on our plate. And I think that we still need to break it up enough so that everyone kind of understands which section of the plan we're on at that given time.
Mhm. Yes.
Any, Tamara, you had your hand up?
Yeah, can we get a table at the farmer's market? Like, can we talk to them and figure out a couple of Sundays where we can go there and just talk to people and get their feedback?
Yes.
Okay, should we, is that something that we could reach out to them, or how should we get that going?
Well,
I have like a different angle.
okay.
It's just going to where other people are. So like the Presbyterian Church is completely, you know, they're sort of a segment of the population. The Presbyterian Church and the Rotary groups that meet within our community that we should go to. Yeah, because they might not come to us.
Right.
And so letting them know that what we're working on.
PTAs.
Yeah. Yeah.
PTAs, I mean, and student groups. I think it makes a lot of sense to, again, for the two-way street aspect. And one of the things I would hope our communication plan starts with is a questionnaire of where are we starting from in the community. You know, what is our kind of level of awareness? What do people think is important now? Again, I'm a data person, so I tend to look at it in terms of how can we see if we're actually changing the conversation if we don't know what conversation we're starting with. Where is the resistance coming from? You know, what are the concerns that people have that cause them to resist or reject the concept that this is a critical issue?
Well, there, okay. Jessica, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, so it sounds like what everyone's sort of circling around, Sarah, is that, so thank you for laying out a timeline, first of all, for us to talk about and how to get a work plan together. But it sounds like the majority of folks in the community are suggesting that we move developing the outreach plan, developing and implementing an outreach plan as basically the first bucket, you know, the first couple of months of what we're doing. And that through that, I mean, we have our own ideas of what the goals should be, but through that part of that plan is to actually identify the goals that are important to the community, but we can also identify the knowledge gaps and the barriers, like Miriam was talking about, related to, you know, the education and getting people on board. So it can be both about what's important to the people of Lake Forest Park, but also understanding what is our starting place in terms of education and outreach and information that we need to try to be providing. And that would be part of our plan, our outreach plan.
What if we took this date here and made it September? And so that it overlapped. So I'm trying to, so yeah, I'm in this category here where we say develop and implement, and I had that after these goals. And if we just made this September, would that create enough of, because our first step is just to get the council okay on where we're going. So, yeah, Pam.
So I appreciate the desire for having something linear, but I also am going to express my impatience. So what I'd like to do is, first I'll say, yes, I'm entirely on board with that. However, I want us to do homework. I want us to have homework assignments where we take these mitigation strategies, for instance, and take a category and read mitigation strategies that have been developed by other groups and identify the ones that are even worth discussing for Lake Forest Park. Because I can go through, for instance, I can go through this immediately and say, hey, we don't have a landfill, so we're not going to talk about how we're going to reduce emissions from the landfill, because that's actually physically outside the city limits. So if we can take these and do a presentation on these each month, so that we're learning as we go, because as you study the mitigation strategies, you start identifying what the goals might be and how they might fit this community. And it helps you have conversations with people about where we are and where we might go. So would that be acceptable?
Can we, before you ask it, can we hold that for a minute and come back to it? Because I think it's included, but I want to shape some stuff about where we are with emissions first and then move to that. And,
absolutely.
And I'd like to see if we change the, if we, maybe we change the develop outreach strategies to June. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
If you had outreach sort of going as its own column. Yeah, I think it needs its own row, so it's gonna happen all along here. Instead of being a up and down, it's a row.
Okay.
That's what I was suggesting.
Okay. So, okay.
So we can do the emission levels thing at the same time as another part of our group is thinking about, or all of us maybe at the same time, we're thinking about outreach.
But it happens incrementally, right? We're not gonna do all the outreach at once,
No,
right?
right.
There's
It's
little
a
process, little
process.
steps. So I mean, we threw a lot of ideas out.
And also then I think thinking about what Anna's talking about is another row that we can start.
Yeah, so we can just switch the X and Y axis.
Yeah.
And we end up with the right-hand side being develop climate action plan, but all these things do feed into that.
Yeah.
So we leave the right-hand column where it is, and we take the top 3 determined emission levels, because quite honestly, there's stuff we can measure easily. There's additional stuff we will develop over the course of the summer. It's this ongoing thing. I am less confident than Sarah that we will get useful information from the King County emission study. I'm hopeful, but not confident.
Have you seen it for other cities?
No, it doesn't exist.
Oh.
And it's been this
Empty promise.
elusive goal.
I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do is move on and come back to this, because I think we're getting, what I want to say, this is, talk a little bit about what we know about
We do know
emissions
this.
in King County, and then come back and look at that again. And, so one thing we know is that this King, everybody does a donut. I don't know why they think emissions is a donut, but every city has this donut that's done it. So what King County has done is they say their emissions are 24% are from commercial buildings. That 16% is from industrial buildings, a little from solid waste, a little from agriculture, a little from wastewater. 36% is transportation and other mobile sources, and 24% is residential buildings. Now, clearly, when I talked with King County, they said, well, you could use this model, but clearly we don't have industrial buildings and we don't have many commercial buildings. But let me just show you what a couple of other cities have done. This is Kenmore's donut of emissions. And they are, that first orange one is energy in buildings. And it's just in the city that doesn't have the same issues that, it doesn't have industrial parks except that one cement factory. So that's a much bigger, 60% comes from buildings and energy. 31% from transportation and land use. And then off-road equipment, I don't know what that is, a boat? Is that off-road?
It would be the boats, it would be the airplanes, the barging. They actually have a significant barge section and they've got the airport.
Okay, that's right.
It says it on the right. It says it on the right there, boats, lawnmowers, construction equipment, etc. On the transportation and land use and to the right there, it says what, yeah.
Okay, boats, lawnmowers, construction equipment. And then the other big category is refrigerants and something Ann is very interested in, and solid waste and a little of other. So that's just a more suburban city and how they've approached it. And let me just show you one more. This is Edmonds, and they didn't put a hole in their donut. And there was 35% residential buildings, 40% transportation. They have some commercial buildings and again, industrial buildings, refrigerants, and solid waste. Those were their categories. So it tells us something. So what do we know about Lake Forest Park emissions? And I think, it doesn't take rocket science to say the two big areas are transportation and buildings for us. And buildings are residential buildings for the most part, but also commercial buildings. So, and then the question is, where do we get good data? And that King County has a contract out for emission studies for each city in King County. So they are preparing that. That is part of the King County Cities Climate Collaborative Project, and we pushed them to provide this data for cities. Corey tells me that they now say that it will be July. They'll be done in the end of June or July. This has been a moving target, but what I'm saying is that even without getting the specific data, we can move ahead knowing that most of it's going to be transportation and buildings. And we also have additional sources of information from the People for Climate Action, LFP, has developed both vehicle information and some energy sources. And I'll just show you that. This is cars in Lake Forest Park. What could be more fun than that? That we have 10,942 vehicles.
Just about one per person.
And that we have, and shows that, well, this is the kicker for me. We got, look at all those antique cars we have. Well, who knew? Antique cars, antique cars.
Other people would call them old cars, but that's okay.
Yeah. And some diesel trucks. We have battery electrics. Those are not hybrids, but just regular electric cars. So we have 200 and almost 300 of those. We have a plug-in hybrid electric, 83 of those, and a non-plug-in. I guess those are like the Priuses, right? The Prius. So we have. So this data is from the Department of Motor Vehicles, and it includes police cars. So we have some information about the cars. I don't know what it tells us exactly about emissions. It tells us we got a lot of cars and some of them are emitting. But maybe other people know that better. So I'm just
So
saying we have some information.
To build on what Ann said about like doing some homework and, I think some research on, some of these things between meetings is like, for example, I would be willing to look and see if I could find a city that actually has done something to lower their single occupancy vehicle use, or to, incentivize that has more electric vehicles, maybe someplace in California, for example, who has more stringent, right? And just see what the ratio of gasoline vehicles to hybrid vehicles, for example, is in a place like that. Like, what's the, just some data, like, what are the targets that we would be looking for? Obviously, it's hard to incentivize people necessarily to totally change their cars. I mean, we need to, but it's not going to be easy. But maybe some comparisons like that, right? So that we kind of have a sense of, well, how big of a lift is this to try to figure this out? So that could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a whole bunch of people, but like to what Ann was saying about doing some research, learning some things and coming back so that we each kind of have something to report back on. And it's not necessarily every person for every meeting, but then divvying up the work a little bit.
Okay. Let me, Ann, you had something?
Yeah, I think one of the things to bear in mind is that the data team will be looking at ways that we can track whether or not we're meeting our goals. But the strategies for meeting those goals aren't necessarily, when we're talking about things like these options that have been developed by many groups. This is just People for Climate Action. King County has several. Bellevue has several. There's a group called the Rocky Mountain Institute that has an entire approach. There are many ways in which we can address the carbon footprint of vehicles in our community. And it's not just converting passenger cars to electric. So I think what it would be good to do is start by looking at some of these strategies and then look at how other communities have achieved various portions of the strategies. But I
understand that. I was just using that as an example.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear you, Jessica.
I understand that, Ann. I was just using that as an example. You were trying to incentivize people to do work between meetings. I was just using that as an example of ways to incentivize. I wasn't saying that that was the end all be all of everything we were going to do.
No, my goal is hopefully that we get a common language of strategies. That's.
So can you clarify who the data team is?
Sorry?
Who's the data team?
Brian, Linda, and Ian. But it could be anody. I think we had
It's not limited. It's not limited.
So I guess that's one thing that it would be nice to report. You'd given out the assignments or we made these groupings and then nothing really, a lot of them, nothing happened. And there was no ways for people to sign up, and there was not very little engagement on that. So it sounds like maybe some of you have had some meetings and maybe done some work, but it would be nice to hear what, I guess, if that's actually happened.
Yes, I think part of it was, yes, some of the groups have met. Some of them have made some steps forward. But I think what happened was that, I don't want to say that we weren't sort of on the same, we weren't all together about where we wanted to go, I didn't think. So I wanted to step back. So the work that we've done, I think, is still valuable, and I think we can use it, but I'm not sure we don't need to stay in those same groups. We need, we can move around and do other things and just keep that information that we had there. So I have a couple of things I want to So I would like to brainstorm with you what you think the next steps are.
Well, one of the things that was on your timeline was this emissions study.
Yep.
And so we're waiting on King County to possibly get that for us, and that is, who's doing that? And
It's a consulting group, I can't remember the name of them, but.
And is that who would have provided? So it seems like all these other cities that have already got their, like Kenmore, that have already got their climate action plan put out, they are using some other. Well, how did they get their emissions?
They hired their own.
They hired their own.
consultant.
So is that something that we can do?
We can, but
And how much does that cost? And I think it's
Okay,
Tracy,
okay, so this, I could actually be helpful here. So I'm gonna ask Corey, when does the mayor, through Jeff, Bree, Perigo, our public works director, and Andrew Sylvia, our project manager, ask you for budget requests? In other words, for the next biennium, which is 2023-24, when do you start getting queries from those guys about what you need?
I just got a draft plan today and I didn't look at the dates, but it will be coming up soon.
Right. And that's why we need our work plan, is because if you want to hire a consultant, this is basically the time to put in for the money for it. So Corey can basically put it in her plan. So this is one of the reasons why, I like the approach the committee is taking right now, is these next steps involve what's the city on the hook for, right? Okay.
So it sounds like the King County data or whatever they would give us is not necessarily something we can rely on getting anytime.
I think we can,
necessarily.
well, Ann doesn't think so, but I think we can rely on getting it.
Yeah, I saw some examples of it. It is close, so it'll be in the next month or two.
Even though they've said that before.
Can I interrupt? Oh. Sorry.
I would actually ask them if they would, well, I didn't get an answer to it, but I did ask them if they would come out and present to the public what they found. And that would be a piece of our public education. What are our missions? How do we do that? Yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody who was speaking.
I was just gonna say, I feel like we do need a backup plan though, in case that doesn't come to fruition and they don't give us the data or information that we want to see. Like, is there another way that we can get similar data that we can kind of start with?
Well, that's what I was suggesting, that we forget data and just say, well, you're not old enough, but in the old days, there was a guy named Karnak the Magnificent, and he'd say the answer is, and we know the answer. The answer is transportation and housing. We don't know the specifics of it. Those are the big ones. So we can move. That's what I'm suggesting. I think we can move forward, saying, what can we do to begin to think about, this is right, help me here, think about ways which we can reduce the emissions from transportation. It's for me that the thing that I raised in the beginning, it's the last mile. So people want to take public transportation, but they got to drive down to the mall to get on it. Or there are alternatives. Could we work with Amped Adventure to do an overnight rental of, I'm making this up, overnight rental of an e-bike? So you get off the 522 and you get on your e-bike, this rental e-bike, and you take it home and you bring it back the next morning. Do we rent a gas-powered vehicle that runs around town and drops people off? So we could do those things already. What do we need to do to electrify? What do we need to do about heat pumps? Because that's the easiest bite in homes. So there are things we can do without knowing the answer.
I totally agree with you, Sarah.
Yep.
And there's things that you guys can do without consultant money if that's.
Yeah, but it'd be much slower without consultant.
Do we have a budget for this?
Yes, it's zero.
How much?
But you're saying you can ask for specific
Yeah.
things.
Yes, that's what, that is an excellent question. And the reason I got so anxious about the work plan is once we have the work plan in front of the council, then we're in a position to ask for money in the 2023 budget. So, because I think, and I've called many of the projects, the consultant projects are with a company called Cascadia Consulting. And they did, so I called them and asked to, sort of have a free-floating conversation about what can you do for us and how much does it cost? But I don't have any, that's one of the to-dos, is that I'm gonna write that down so there's one to-do up there. But
Sarah, let me know. I know people who work there. So if you're not getting responsiveness from them, let me know and I can help you connect with people.
Okay.
They work on all the planning efforts for salmon recovery in Puget Sound. I mean, they are the planning consulting company in Puget Sound. They are very, very good. They are not cheap. I mean, I'm a consultant. I'm not cheap either. But consultants are, they're very good at what they do.
Okay, so research consulting costs. So I'm going to put my name by that. I'm going to say, and Jessica. Maybe we can get on the phone.
Sorry.
What else do we need to do? I would like to finalize. I'd like to go back. What I would like to do is take the design for the work plan, do a little shifting, send it around electronically, and get an okay from people to schedule it at the council, some council meeting. Does that seem okay?
Do you think that that's enough? What you have, is that the level of detail that the council's expecting? Do we have any sense? Yes.
No, but I think I can send it to Tracy.
It'll be good enough.
Yeah, and Tracy's our advocate.
Right.
He's gonna
Right.
say it's great. So,
It really doesn't need to have extremely large amounts of specifics. It just needs to basically put out, this is our end goal for this year. And as long as the council feels that the abilities of the committee will get you to that point, they don't really care about the specifics that much.
there was a lot of discussion about research that we thought ought to go on. Do you see those as next steps, researching? It seems to me everybody ought to be looking at, pick one of the city plans and read it.
Yeah, it's not research so much as review and study.
My only concern about the the shoreline plan is quite old, right? And there's in the process of so I just don't know that it's very relevant, I guess. They're in the process of updating it. Do you agree with that?
And the other thing is they have a lot of money. So we just might get envy. But I think Kenmore, I haven't read Mercer Island. Have you read Mercer Island? You suggested Bainbridge.
Bainbridge is one I have been familiar with, but I mean, it was much more than we would ever want to do, but it had a lot of really nice elements. It did a lot of work on impact, what are the impacts that Bainbridge Island was going to see.
But maybe that's another research topic. Somebody could just look around and see if there are other plans that might be relevant that we can gather. And for like maybe does Kirkland have one? I think of them as being I mean, they're bigger than us, but at least they're on the lake or like Issaquah, or I don't know, any of the other cities on lakes.
I think Kirkland does not have one yet. I think there are actually very few. I'd say there's Burien. Mercer Island is working on it. They don't have a plan yet. So it's Burien, Kenmore, Shoreline, Seattle, King County, Bainbridge. There's it on the website. Yeah. So we will put, I forgot to say, there's a Dropbox. We have a Dropbox. And if you're not familiar with it, you should talk with Corey and she'll show you how to use it. But we'll drop those in there so you can go and look at them.
And we can also drop in this People for Climate Action series of, again, these are just specific line items of things that can be done, not all of which apply to every community, but the design of this was choose the ones that are relevant to your community and use them, modify them so that they suit your community from a planning perspective.
And what are they called, Ann? Drop in People for Climate Action's what?
It's the climate action priorities for cities.
So are we, just another question, for the whole budget, adding on to the budget thing, are we gonna have to like fundraise at some point? Should we try to figure out strategies for fundraise? No? Okay.
There might be some things we do with implementation that where we say we want to mitigate something or another, and we would go out for a grant. But I think otherwise, we have to assume we pay taxes and we're going to ask for them back. But I like them. I like your enthusiasm about going out and doing fundraising. Yeah.
Does Shoreline, how do they have?
They have
Very big. They're big.
they're big.
Yeah, so they need more money. So
They have
like,
a commercial and retail sector, so they have a different tax base.
yeah,
They have a sales tax base that we don't
and
have.
they're so they're putting that money though into
Their community better, yes.
And yes, yeah, it may be that at the end, we recommend something like going out to the public for months.
Sorry, can
so
you say that again, Sarah, a little bit louder? We recommend what?
Jessica, I lost my mind for a minute there. I was saying we should go out to the citizens and ask for a tax increase, but I think that's a little premature. Just one of the things we could do.
That's an extreme option.
Yeah. So, all right, so Ann you're gonna drop that in there and we're gonna ask people to take a look at that. What else do we need to do to move ourselves forward here?
Sarah,
Yes.
with if people are still interested in like reviewing the climate action plan for Shoreline, I have that. Like I have, so Cameron Reed, who works in the city of Shoreline, I organized like a climate forum with him where he came to my school and he like talked in the theater, and he has this whole slideshow presentation of like what their city's currently doing and what they're updating it to hopefully do.
Well,
Is
would
that-
you post that on the Dropbox?
I can try. I don't use like, is that Microsoft? Is Dropbox Microsoft?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
can try and figure that out. I have everything on Google, but I can try.
It's the same thing as Google Drive, Bella. So basically you click on that link that Corey sent you. That's
Yeah.
the box link. It'll open a browser window on your computer and you just drag your file and drop it into the screen and it'll upload it. That's all you
Okay.
have to do.
I'm gonna send Cameron a quick email before I do that to let him know, but thank you. Yeah.
is it a live thing like Google, or is it, like, it used to be that you would drop files in and then if you changed it, then it was different.
Right.
Dropbox is
Static.
static.
Yeah, you can't change. I mean, you
So
can.
that's
place-
problematic, isn't it, for us, because we're moving and we've got all these different people
Not
collaborating.
yet. We'll figure that out later.
You can always move people.
So Sarah, given that a lot of people seem really interested in outreach, maybe we should all, well, whoever's interested in outreach, and maybe we should all come back to the next meeting with, one outreach type of task that we each would be willing to take on. Like we were talking about a table at the farmer's market, but I think maybe even having a survey where we walk around and talk to people and say, hey, would you be willing to answer a few quick questions, with a clipboard of information, and trying to get a bunch of people who might not stop at the table otherwise or at other events or things like that. But anyway, I just think maybe if we all come back to the next meeting with like one thing that we would be willing to sort of champion and lead, and then we can maybe then narrow it down from there. And there might be some overlap on what people want to do, but
I'm gonna say just, you guys are probably aware, but being on like the stormwater side of education, people do not know the basics. So you're gonna be surprised at like how basic, how much plain language you really need to go back to.
Well, let me ask you this. I certainly have been accused of being a linear thinker today, but here I am, once again. If we get the work plan out and agreed on and we schedule the meeting with the council, what do you think the next meeting of this group should be? Should we do a workshop on outreach? So instead of bringing people together, we say, while we're looking for this, waiting for the emissions, or should we work on transportation or housing? Or
Brainstorm outreach.
so is that, do you want to, does that, okay, the other thing we could do is we could ask Cameron or the woman from Kenmore to come in and talk to us about what they did. That
when
would
you
be
said
helpful.
something about the budget though, right? Don't we have to, so if we get the council to say, yes, that looks good from a work plan, we actually have to identify things that are gonna cost money and try to start figuring out how much that's gonna cost if we're gonna ask for money, right? Is that a pressing issue?
Uh,
I think it would be pressing once we get into August, but it's probably okay not to do that in July. Corey, you've been here longer than I have.
It's coming up soon.
Right.
What would be funding, like
Consultants to assist with the implementation of the plan.
besides the consultant?
You have flyers at farmers markets, potentially surveys that, printed materials. It might be some of the digital outreach may be boosted. So there might be limited funds going to boosting Facebook posts, for example, if we're doing something in the fall. What we've done in the past to bring people to the town halls has been rely on third place books and people stumbling upon that. Putting some money into boosting posts can often be valuable.
postcards to every house.
Yeah.
Stamps.
Mailers.
Mailers.
So, yeah, put that on your work plan.
So, there can be, there could be a mailer every 6 months with here's the events that are happening. Stick this on your fridge.
I do have some budget that would help some of this already. So I would like,
Can you hear? You guys hear? Okay. Hard to figure out where to- So how much you got?
well, I get grant money every year for, recycling, waste reduction, and I can pick and pull from these grants to help pay for stuff like that.
So it's really the larger item, larger ticket items.
Yeah. So that was saying larger ticket item. So, so again, I'm going to ask this question: what do you think the next meeting ought to be? What is our focus for our next meeting? I feel like I'm just stumbling here, so I need help.
This is Tamara. I mean, I like the idea of having a booth at the farmer's market this summer. So perhaps we could come up with like a list of questions we want to ask people or how we want to, present at this booth and what information we want to present and what we hope to get from people as far as feedback from them.
Okay,
We could-
I've done some outreach at farmers market, at this farmers market, and it's mostly dots and stuff that you can do because people are coming and going really quickly. But
I think it
let's
would be great to have somebody come from Kenmore at some point. I don't know if the next meeting is the right time. And I guess the only other thing about that is that it sounds like their process was very, very different because it was led, by a team of consultants who do this for a living and know exactly probably what they're doing and have done it several times.
Well, I'm not sure if that's actually the case. I don't know. I don't understand their process very well. Didn't they work with you? Didn't
They
they
had
have
a staff person.
they have a staff person? I thought they had an intern.
Yeah, it was an intern from UW working with, and they also were able to break over some staff time to support the intern. And they have an active chapter of People for Climate Action. So they didn't have a group like this. They had a half a dozen people who were studying this in detail, who worked with the intern and the staff person.
Okay. Well, maybe what if we asked around to see, call Burien and talk to them about what they do? And if there was somebody who could make a presentation, do you think that would be helpful? Let's say there was somebody who was closer to what we were doing. Would it, we'd ask them to come in for 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Yeah.
So I think that's a really good question to ask is, at what point would a consultant help our process, right? So the idea is that, yes, it's good to have a budget for a consultant, but $10,000 spent, for instance, at a particular time might be way more productive than $10,000 spent at some other time.
Yep. So you said find out
when we should bring in a consultant, at what point do we, as a community, need to be at?
Okay. So Anna.
I was just gonna ask, I'm still a little confused on the status of the like smaller groups that were kind of like half created. Is that like, are we gonna still be doing individual work with that, or like what is kind of happening with that?
We're just trying to figure that out. Nobody
Okay.
knows.
Okay.
Have an idea? I mean, I think what we said in that, and this is hard, but that when we looked at the brainstorms that we did before, we were clear, and even in the very first meeting, we were clear that outreach was critical, and that whatever we were doing, we talked about it as companion. So we see it as an absolutely critical piece of engaging the public, figuring out what they want, and sort of making sure. So we're trying to figure that out, Anna. How do we do it is the question. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, because since I was a part of the like kind of communication and outreach group, I do think that like everyone should have some kind of a role in that, like depending on what they have access to. And like I think we should have maybe like I can try to host a separate or not separate, but like an additional meeting before the next one to try to figure out like what people who want to get involved in the outreach aspect of it, like what people want to do. I think Bella and I were already talking about having a meeting about that, whether it's like going to like individual houses to like poll or what, but I think that should be going on like constantly kind of in the background of this.
Okay. So what you're going to have is an outreach meeting. And you're inviting other people to join it, then to bring back to the whole group. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, because as of last meeting, there were 2 other people who were in it, but we weren't able to get together and kind of talk about it because I was unsure what the task at hand was before this meeting.
Outreach meeting on outreach.
Are we kind of thinking that our next meeting would be an outreach meeting?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Do you think that the next meeting would be a meeting on outreach?
I mean, yeah, that would be great. I just didn't know how quickly you kind of wanted to move the initiative along. But yeah, that would be great if that could be like a outreach meeting.
So
Sarah,
yes.
What I heard is that there's interested in developing some kind of a survey where we could ask our fellow community members, where are you on various issues? Perhaps there are a couple of specific concepts. One is a communication plan in general, which starts with the outreach, learning from the community. And then there's specific tasks within that. And then there's events that we would theoretically be attending. What might be good is if part of our homework for all of us is to come up with survey questions that we think might fit in this, but that the leads for the outreach group, which are Anna and Bella, and did you have a third person also? Trace? No, not me. Okay.
Yeah, it was me, Tamara.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. That if you had a chance to meet, you could discuss not just a survey, but other broad elements of what this communication plan might look like, and then help lead the next meeting so that you're telling us what input and feedback you need to develop various products like a community survey. And maybe the goal of the meeting for next week would be to have a solid rough draft of a community survey and a list of specific events at which we would circulate that.
So is there? I'm not, okay, I didn't hear the survey. I heard people wanted to figure things out.
Oh, okay.
But
I heard the word survey come up a couple times, so I may have been.
I mentioned the survey. I mentioned that just as an because it sounded like folks really wanted to gain instead of us setting goals, we wanted to gather more information from our community prior to us setting the goals to see what I thought I had heard that from some folks. And so and as to your point, Sarah, about the, being at I think it's great to be at the farmer's market, but like I go to the farmer's market almost every weekend. I never stop at any of the tables. Like I just go and I'm walking around and doing my thing. So that's where I feel like maybe we have to be more proactive. So I mentioned the survey, like having a survey where you actually go up and engage people and talk to people.
We have Survey Monkey. So we could do a Survey Monkey and send it out to, could we send it out to every city person?
Well,
Right.
Facebook next door, Instagram, that's how it, and the city has an email list. Yeah.
Okay, so we could use, so that would be, Tracy.
Yeah, and to Jessica's point, if you have a chance, go to the Spartan Rec Center at the Shoreline Center. Shoreline, of course, is undergoing their update for their climate action plan, and they want to do exactly what we're doing, which is basically what are people in the city interested in fixing. And they've got 3 big, what are those things called? Not whiteboards, but those sheets that you throw over, the presentation.
Poster sheets.
Yeah, poster sheets. It's basically very nicely printed, by the way, with basically different categories like you were talking about, and like 8 choices under each category. So like under transportation, under buildings, stuff like that, right? And dots. And that thing is just filling up. I mean, there are like dozens of responses there. I was just stunned at how well that works. And of course, Spartan Rec is actually trafficked pretty heavily, right? So the point is basically, if you want to do something like at the farmer's market, I think we got an example of something that might work.
And I'll send up community event dates for the summer too. There's August 1st, 2nd, and 6th will be Battle of the Bands. Picnic in the Park is September 10th. We'll miss the first concert in the park.
Well, and if you're doing that, the other thing that we could bring to the next meeting is everybody bring every community group that you know about. And let's create a table of community groups and who we know in those groups. So that first off, let's list all the groups, and then let's list the humans that we know who can connect with those groups, because we probably know somebody in most of these groups, or know somebody who knows somebody in the rest of the groups. And then we can discuss how we might intersect with those groups to both gain feedback from them and share information with them. Jessica?
So it's at 8:30, and I wanted to raise a question about the date of the next meeting, which is July 5th, the day after the 4th of July.
Okay, well, that's a good question. what day of the week is it?
It's a Tuesday, but we are
Okay.
planning to be away.
Well, what,
Can you make it the following week?
can we make it the following, Rick, can you check your calendars and see if you can do it the next week?
No.
Um, So the 11th doesn't work? How about the 12th? 12th of July?
Okay.
That's fine for Anna and I.
Wait a second,
I'm
I
speaking
still-
for Anna.
Not Tuesday. Today's Tuesday? So
If it's
were
just
you-
Anna and I mean, it's, I feel badly, but is there not, that doesn't affect anybody else to be the day after the 4th of July?
No, I'd go with what you said.
Okay, how about the, I'm hearing 12th doesn't work, how about the 18th?
I mean, the 19th,
19th?
19th, that's Tuesday. Oh,
So we were doing first Tuesdays, right?
Right.
I have second Tuesday filled and third Tuesday filled and the fourth Tuesday filled in July.
Well,
So I'm good on Wednesday nights. So like the 6th or the 13th or
you guys back by the 6th?
I can't do the 6th, I could do the 13th.
It's Anna's
13th.
birthday. Sorry, that's why we're gone. One of the reasons we're gone. It's Anna's birthday on the 6th. So we're gone the 4th through the 6th.
Wednesday, the 13th.
Yes. Okay.
That's fine. That works for us.
Okay,
right on.
before anybody checks their calendar again. So we're gonna our next meeting is July 13th. And how old will you be? Were you allowed to ask you how old you're gonna be?
17.
Oh boy, have you registered to vote?
No, not yet. I didn't even know I could do that now.
Yes, do it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so that's probably out of bounds. Okay, so this is what I think we said, and I do want to get out of here, Jessica, you're exactly right. I think what we said was we had some of these assignments that we were gonna work on outreach at the next meeting. And Anna, I'd like to come to whenever your meeting is. And is there anybody else who'd like to come?
Yes, me. Linda.
Let me- Yes,
Okay,
no more than 5.
no more than
Oh,
5.
never mind then.
No, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, so who should I add on that email? So me, Bella, Linda, Sarah, and then I have room for one more.
Tamara.
Oh, Tamara.
Tamara's your co-chair. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, so that subcommittee is gonna need to bring some kind of plans, working on the survey seems to be the issue, one of the issues we wanna look at. I'm also gonna to noodle around with a work plan and send that out as a separate document, an individual separate document to you for approval about what you think we'll do, and schedule a meeting with the council and to make the presentation. And I'm gonna check and see if there are other places that might talk to us about what they've done. Just get that into. And I'll just bring that back. Are there other things? So everybody does have an assignment. They are assigned to look at other people's other cities' plans, and think about survey questions. Think about.
And try to look for cities that haven't done a consultant, but maybe have a climate action group to.
Okay, Corey's gonna look for that. Corey's gonna look for, I'm gonna write that down so we can hold it accountable. Cities that are sort of at the beginning of the process, right?
Yeah, just climate group, yeah, other climate action.
So Kirkland is doing something, but they're starting with, I know idling camp, they're starting with a educational program.
One of the things that has happened is a lot of cities have decided that it's cost prohibitive to get data and to actually calculate anything. So what they're doing is effectively what we have as a community done and said, yes, probably transportation and buildings, let's start there.
Yeah.
And just start coming up with individual line item things that can be done. And that is not a bad strategy. The challenge is then demonstrating that you're meeting any kind of goal. But it's not a bad strategy. So I think we can, yeah, that's why I'm really urging people to go ahead and look at these various strategies. Because we can adopt strategies that are just great ideas and figure out how to calculate whether they've done any good later.
And a couple of cities around are doing not climate action plans, but sustainability.
Yeah.
They call them like
Yeah.
a SOAP or something, sustainable operations plans or different things like that.
Awful.
Well, and
Awful. Yeah.
Mayor Jeff, looking at, okay, if we need a new weed whacker, let's get a battery powered one instead of a gas operated one. He can just do that. That is actually a climate action.
Yeah.
That's a perfectly solid climate action. And, you know, you don't need a plan to just go, well, that's a good idea, I'll do that. So,
The plan would be getting that information out to people to say that this is a generally good strategy for the community to do that.
Well, we could write an article for him under his name about
Right.
what I'm doing for climate action and for his quarterly things that he sends out.
Maybe next meeting we can talk about, we can start setting up a webpage that has, you know, education on it that we can direct people to.
that's part of outreach. Okay, page. I think it is time to go. I don't think you can be on Zoom for more than an hour. Turn into something odd. I really wanted to thank you for the work that you did in your, I know some of you did meet in committees, and that I don't think that work is in vain. I think it'll come back. And I want to thank you for that. And I think we're moving in a direction that will work. So is there anything else for the good of the order before we leave? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Hey, guys.
Bye.
Any online?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. So you have to figure out how to use up the volume. For the next meeting. Right?